The atmosphere across the United Kingdom on this third day of June 2026 is one of heavy anticipation and uneasy silence. For weeks, the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace have acted as a barricade against a growing storm. One that does not involve tabloid gossip or fleeting scandals, but rather the very architectural foundations of the British monarchy itself. It began in the final weeks of May 2026 inside a dimly lit high-security briefing room at St. James's Palace. The meeting was so sensitive, so legally volatile, that even the king's most senior personal aides were reportedly asked to remain in the corridor. When Prince William finally emerged, flanked not by royal courtiers, but by the long-standing trustees of the late Princess Diana's estate, the message sent to the establishment was deafening. A dormant legal titan had been awakened, and it has left King Charles III, already battling the most grueling health crisis of his reign, utterly devastated. The heart of this crisis lies in a document thought to be settled decades ago. As the world watched the transition from the Elizabethan era to the Caroline Age, Princess Diana's financial legacy was often viewed as a closed chapter, a generous inheritance divided between her two sons. However, according to explosive leaks from within the Spencer family's legal circle, the trust was far more than a simple distribution of wealth. It was a strategic, long-term constitutional shield. As the trustees confirmed the interpretation of a specific, previously overlooked bloodline clause, the reality of the situation hit the palace like a tidal wave. Diana's trust fund and the immense structural protections attached to it names only Prince William's direct line as its beneficiaries and protected heirs. To understand why this has sent King Charles into a state of emotional and political despair, one must look at the timing. By May 2026, the king's public appearances have become increasingly rare. The exhaustion of his ongoing health struggles, which began in early 2024, has created a vacuum of authority within the House of Windsor. In this fragile moment, the sudden reemergence of Diana's influence is not merely a nostalgic reminder of the past. It is an active intervention in the future. Reports suggest that Charles was informed of the trustees' findings only after Prince William had been privately briefed. For a reigning monarch to be secondary to his heir in matters of royal legacy is a humiliation that resonates through the very stones of the palace. The bloodline clause is described by legal insiders as a masterpiece of foresight. Drafted in the wake of her 1996 divorce, at a time when Diana felt increasingly isolated and distrustful of the system, the clause reportedly ensures that certain assets, symbolic protections, and continuity safeguards are triggered only if the monarchy enters a period of internal fragmentation or instability. In the eyes of the trustees, the conditions of 2026, a weakened king, a fractured family, and a shifting social landscape have met that threshold. This trust does not recognize the wider machinery of the crown. It recognizes the biological continuation of Diana through William, George, Charlotte, and Louis. This revelation has effectively created two distinct power centers within the monarchy. On one side stands Buckingham Palace, struggling to maintain the status quo under King Charles and Queen Camilla. On the other stands Kensington Palace, now fortified by a multi-million-pound legal framework that operates entirely outside the king's control. Sources close to the king's administrative team describe him as visibly shaken, not by the money, but by the symbolism. To Charles, this is a final posthumous message from Diana, a reminder that while he may wear the crown, she still holds the keys to the family's moral and emotional legitimacy. The shock waves have been particularly violent for the inner circle of Queen Camilla. For years, the palace worked tirelessly to integrate Camilla into the heart of the royal brand, successfully navigating her journey from third person in a marriage to queen consort. However, the 2026 trust review has stripped away that veneer of integration. The trustees were reportedly uncompromising. The protections and legacy of the Princess of Wales belong exclusively to her bloodline. Camilla is not merely a non-factor in this trust. She is institutionally excluded. The deafening silence surrounding the princess's legacy has been replaced by a legal clarity that draws a sharp, unforgiving line between the Spencer-Windsor heirs and everyone else. As Prince William takes a more central role in the day-to-day management, Charles grapples with the realization that a significant portion of the monarchy's insurance policy is beyond his reach, the public is beginning to sense a shift in the wind. The Street James briefing was the first crack in the dam. Now, as the details of Diana's final act of protection leak into the global consciousness, the House of Windsor faces a truth it can no longer ignore. The future is not being written by the king, but by the enduring will of a princess who refused to be forgotten. By the 3rd of June, 2026, the term Diana's trust has transformed from a footnote in royal financial history into what insiders are calling the ghost will, a dormant legal instrument that has effectively rewritten the power dynamics of the House of Windsor. To understand why this document has left King Charles III devastated and the palace in a state of high alert panic, one must peel back the layers of a legal strategy drafted 3 decades ago in the volatile aftermath of the War of the Waleses. The trust in question was not merely a repository for the £17 million settlement Diana received after her 1996 divorce. According to researchers and legal consultants who have spent the last month analyzing the Street James briefing documents, the Princess of Wales, guided by a team of fiercely loyal Spencer family advisors, constructed a legal fortress. This was a time when Diana felt the men in gray suits at the palace were actively working to diminish her influence, and by extension, the emotional independence of her sons. The resulting trust framework was not just an inheritance. It was a Spencer-Windsor covenant designed to protect William and his future descendants from the very institution Diana believed had failed her. The most explosive element surfacing in the May 2026 review is the bloodline safeguard. Unlike traditional royal trusts, which are often structured to support the sovereign of the day or the monarchy as an institution, Diana's trust is fundamentally restrictive. It specifically names the direct biological lineage of William Arthur Philip Lewis as the sole primary beneficiaries of its most significant protections. In the eyes of the law, this creates a clear, impenetrable boundary. As the trustees reportedly confirmed during the 10 sessions in late May, the trust assets and, more importantly, its symbolic rights cannot be shared with, diverted to, or influenced by any other branch of the royal family. This includes the wider household of King Charles III and, most pointedly, any influence stemming from the current queen consort. Why has this become a crisis in the summer of 2026? The answer lies in a series of instability triggers embedded within the original 1990s framework. Legal historians suggest that Diana's trustees were granted the power to activate certain succession protections if the monarchy entered a period of internal fragmentation or perceived transition. With King Charles III's health struggles dominating the headlines since early 2024 and the Prince of Wales increasingly taking on the mantle of a shadow king, the trustees, led by representatives of the Spencer family, determined that the trigger conditions had been met. The role of the Spencer family in this 2026 drama cannot be overstated. Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, has long been the custodian of her memory, famously promising at her 1997 funeral that her blood family would continue to protect her sons. Sources suggest that it was the Earl himself who initiated urgent continuity review in May 2026. By doing so, the Spencers have effectively bypassed Buckingham Palace, dealing directly with Kensington Palace. This maneuver has sidelined the king's advisors, creating a situation where the future of the monarchy's most valuable emotional assets, the image and legacy of the Princess of Wales, is being managed by a team that answers to William, not the crown. The technicalities of the trust go even deeper. Insiders whisper that the framework includes a moral legitimacy clause. This unusual provision reportedly allows the trustees to withhold certain symbolic assets, such as Diana's personal jewelry collection, archival materials, and specific intellectual properties if the direct line is perceived to be under undue institutional pressure. In 2026, this is being interpreted as a move to ensure that Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are raised and marketed to the public as the true, unadulterated continuation of Diana's spirit, free from the traditional Windsor mold that Diana so famously resisted. For King Charles, the discovery that this trust is so exclusionary has been a devastating blow to his authority, according to palace administrative leaks. Charles creates a kingdom within a kingdom. It provides William with a level of financial and symbolic autonomy that no heir apparent has ever possessed in the history of the British throne. It means that William does not need the king's permission to utilize his mother's legacy. The law already gave it to him 30 years ago. Furthermore, the 2026 review highlights the strategic foresight of the late princess. In the mid-90s, Diana reportedly feared that a future King Charles might attempt to reshape the monarchy in a way that prioritized his own secondary alliances, specifically his future with Camilla Parker Bowles. By naming only William's line, she ensured that the emotional center of gravity of the British people's affection would always follow her son, regardless of who sat on the throne or who wore the title of queen. As of the 3rd of June, 2026, the legal dust has not yet settled. The palace is reportedly looking for ways to harmonize the Diana Trust with the Duchy of Cornwall and the Sovereign Grant, but the trustees are standing firm. They argue that Diana's wishes are paramount and that her intent to isolate her legacy from the broader royal machinery is legally indisputable. This has left the king's legal team in a stalemate. They are confronting a document that was written by a woman who knew the system's weaknesses and exploited them to protect her children's future. The ghost will of Diana is no longer a legend. It is a reality that has effectively partitioned the House of Windsor. It has established that while Charles may hold the crown of the present, Diana's hand still guides the crown of the future. The exclusion of the wider household and the specific shielding of William's children signals that the 21st century monarchy will not be a continuation of the old guard, but a rebirth through the Spencer-Windsor line. For the king, the realization is bitter. The woman he could never fully understand has outmaneuvered the institution he spent a lifetime waiting to lead. As of the 3rd of June, 2026, the corridors of Windsor Castle are said to be filled with a heavy, suffocating silence that masks a profound constitutional and personal crisis. At the center of this storm is King Charles III, a man who waited 7 decades to wear the crown, only to find that the most potent influence over his family's future is not his sovereign will, but the legal architecture left behind by a woman he lost 30 years ago. For Charles, the revelation that Princess Diana's trust fund specifically and exclusively names William's line as its beneficiaries is not just a legal hurdle. It is an emotional catastrophe that has hollowing out the authority of his reign. To understand the king's current state of devastation, one must consider the physical and mental toll of the past 2 years. Since early 2024, Charles has been locked in a grueling battle with his health, a journey that has seen him move in and out of specialized treatment while attempting to maintain the dignity of the office. By the summer of 2026, palace insiders describe the king as a fragile titan. He is a man who desperately seeks to leave a legacy of a unified, modern, and harmonious House of Windsor. The sudden activation of the Diana Trust's succession protections has shattered that dream, exposing a fault line that he is powerless to mend. The deepest sting for the king lies in the perceived breach of royal hierarchy. In the rigid world of the British monarchy, the sovereign is the sun around which all other planets revolve. Yet, in the May 2026 legal briefings at St. James's Palace, that order was effectively inverted. Reports suggest that Prince William was consulted and briefed by the Spencer Trust weeks before the king's own legal team was granted full access to the review's findings. For Charles, discovering that his heir is operating within a separate, protected power structure, one fueled by Diana's legacy and Spencer family influence, has been a bitter pill of irrelevance. It suggests that while Charles may hold the title of king, the institutional insurance for the monarchy has already skipped a generation. Insiders close to the king's private quarters at Sandringham whisper that Charles feels haunted by the persistence of the past. Throughout his life, Charles has sought to move beyond the turbulent narrative of his first marriage. He believed that his coronation and the successful elevation of Camilla to queen consort had finally settled the ghosts of the 1990s. However, the 2026 Trust Review has proven that Diana's influence was not merely a matter of public sentiment, but a structural reality embedded in the very foundations of the family's wealth and legitimacy. To Charles, this feels like a posthumous veto of his efforts to reshape the family's image. The devastation rooted in the king's fear of a two-monarchy problem. On one hand, Charles presides over the official state monarchy, the one of red boxes, constitutional duties, and diplomatic receptions. On the other hand, there is the emotional monarchy represented by William, Catherine, and their children, a branch now fortified by a private, autonomous legal framework that excludes the king's household. Charles reportedly views the trust's bloodline clause as a divisive instrument that creates a kingdom within a kingdom. It reinforces the idea that William's household is the only one that truly matters for the long-term survival of the crown, leaving Charles and Camilla looking like a transitional, if not temporary, bridge to the future. The emotional toll of this realization is exacerbated by Charles's relationship with William. While the two have grown closer in recent years, united by the burdens of duty, the trust revelations have introduced a colder, more professional distance between Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace. Charles reportedly sought to have the trust language softened or harmonized to include the wider family, arguing that such exclusivity sends a message of disunity to the public. However, William's reported refusal to alter his mother's original intent and the trustees' insistence on the letter of the law has left the king feeling like an outsider in his own family's legal affairs. Furthermore, the king is said to be deeply concerned about the Camilla factor. He has spent decades protecting and elevating the woman he loves, fighting against the tide of public opinion to ensure she is treated with the respect of a queen. To see her explicitly and legally blocked from the legacy of the Princess of Wales is a personal humiliation that Charles feels acutely. It is a reminder that in the eyes of the Spencer family and the legal architects of Diana's estate, Camilla will always be the outsider whose influence must be contained. This creates a painful domestic reality for the king. Every time he looks at the future of the monarchy through the lens of William's children, he is reminded of the woman who was excluded to make that future possible. As of early June 2026, the king is reportedly retreating into his private work, focusing on his legacy projects such as the Terra Carta and environmental initiatives. Yet, those close to him say the spark of joy that accompanied his early months as king has been replaced by a somber resignation. He is navigating the final chapters of his life under the shadow of a woman whose presence only seems to grow stronger with time. The tragic irony of Charles III's reign is becoming clear. He has the crown, the scepter, and the throne, but he lacks the one thing Diana secured for her son 30 years ago, an unbreakable, legally guaranteed link to the future that no institutional power can override. The king is not just fighting a health crisis or a legal review. He is fighting the enduring will of a princess who ensured that her story and her bloodline would always have the final word. In the quiet hours at Windsor, the realization is devastating. The monarchy he leads is already reorganizing itself around his absence, guided by a document he cannot change, and a legacy he can never escape. By the 3rd of June, 2026, the diplomatic veneer that once held the disparate factions of the House of Windsor together has effectively shattered. While the seas of family united in the face of King Charles III's health challenges, behind the palace walls, a clinical and unyielding struggle for the monarchy's future is unfolding. At the heart of this Cold War is the newly confirmed reality of Princess Diana's trust fund, a legal fortress that has become the ultimate weapon in the hands of Prince William and the ultimate barrier for Queen Camilla. This is no longer a matter of historical grievance. It is a live tactical confrontation over who truly commands the institutional and emotional heights of the British crown. The definitive moment of escalation occurred on the 25th of May, 2026. According to palace administrative streams, a high-level consultative meeting was scheduled to discuss the harmonization